Alrighty. In the interests of time, we will get started. So first of all, big warm welcome to everybody here. Really excited to be hosting this webinar all about UL's Healthy Buildings Program, which is a topic that I think we've wanted to have a presentation on for quite some time. We've had a lot of questions about, so really excited to kick things off today. First of all, a quick self-introduction. My name is Liam. I'm the CEO at Kytera. I'm a huge air quality nerd, have had my head in everything air quality for the past decade or so, on a couple of the advisory committees, including the air concept at the IWBI, and interested and really passionate about everything healthy buildings. So super excited for the discussion today. And today I'm also joined by Sean McCrady, who's the Global Director of Sustainable Real Estate and Properties at UL Solutions. So first of all, welcome, Sean. And like I said, really excited to have this discussion today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Liam.
Perfect. So just a quick intro and overview of the agenda for today. So this webinar is live. It's great to see everybody coming in, and there will be a Q&A afterwards. So if you got questions, please use the Q&A feature, and we'll be going through all those at the end. We're going to have a roughly 30-35 minute session, and then we'll be going over questions for 5-10 minutes. Again, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom and throw your questions in there, and we'll try to get through them all. So short intro to Kytera. At Kytera, we help companies achieve low carbon, healthy buildings. So we are all about helping companies create improved spaces and create indoor environments that can increase occupant well-being, occupant happiness, productivity, and generally create more positive indoor environments. We create hardware solutions to measure indoor environmental parameters. We also have software solutions to help you make sense of the data and ultimately improve your indoor environment. That's Kytera. And our agenda today, very briefly, we will be taking a short but deep dive into the UL Verified Healthy Building Program. Also looking at UL 2906, which is the IAQ sensor guideline. I'll be sharing some thoughts on what to look for in IAQ sensors. And as I mentioned earlier, we will wrap up with a Q&A. So I think I will hand it over to you, Sean, so that you can start with this section.
All right, thanks, Liam, and thanks for coming, everybody. It's great to be here and team up with these guys. So it's a real pleasure. Just something quick on our organization before we jump in on the program itself. So UL Solutions, which is the organization that I work for, and I run one of the many businesses within UL. It's really one of three UL organizations. UL Solutions is, and all three of those are united by a single mission, essentially, which is to work for a safer, more sustainable world. And the other two are UL Research Institutes and UL Standards and Engagement. These are both not-for-profit. So UL Solutions is for-profit. The other two are the not-for-profit. And those not-for-profits are the sole stakeholders of the UL Solutions for-profit business. So essentially, every dollar that we make at UL Solutions goes towards all of the important global research and standard creation, et cetera. We did recently go through a rebrand, just want to point that out. So most people are familiar with Underwriters Laboratories. That was the name of the previous not-for-profit, which again has now been rebranded as UL Research Institutes and UL Standards and Engagement. UL was previously the not-for-profit. That's now called UL Solutions. So hopefully that doesn't confuse everybody, but wanted to just kind of point that out. And our strategy, again, is it's simply to be the industry's most trusted science-based safety, security, and sustainability partner. And we're all about really, promoting safe, secure, sustainable living and working environments, which is very applicable to the conversation today. And doing so through real science. Like Liam, I too am a nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff, and this is kind of my baby, and I'm really passionate about it. So with that, as we jump in here, I want to kind of preface this discussion with kind of an adage, for lack of a better term, that I find myself using again and again to provide people with some guidance especially now during these very uncertain times that we're in. And those of you that are on this call that know me will probably roll your eyes when I say this because you've heard me say it so many times, but that thing that I like to say is don't prescribe the medicine before you diagnose the patient, right? And we think of, in our nerdiness, we think of buildings as patients basically, and far too often we are seeing people just throwing gobs of money at these initiatives and solutions in the built environment without even knowing what exists with regards to the indoor environment. So, complicating things even more is the emergence of a lot of so-called miracle solutions or emerging technologies to enhance the built environment. And look, some of those are legit and have merit and they're good. Not all, but some. But you need to focus on the fundamentals really before you even start considering that stuff. I know it's boring, but the fundamentals are what really matters. And these are things like ventilation and filtration and air distribution and preventative and routine maintenance, et cetera. And in many cases, what people find is that that's all you need. When you really focus on those fundamentals and you can't manage what you don't measure. Not to steal your thunder, Liam, I think you have that on a slide later, but it's something I say all the time. Get the fundamentals right and then figure out where to go from there. So with regards to this program, we created this UL verified healthy building program about 2 years ago, and it was really meant to help building owners and business owners and building managers, et cetera, to sort of communicate a commitment to achieving and maintaining healthy buildings. It wasn't like a knee-jerk COVID thing. It was certainly timely that it was released when COVID was happening because there was even more of an industry need for it. But it's really the evolution of over 4 decades in this space where we have been proactively inspecting buildings and providing advisory services on how to make buildings better. And we've done this we've done over 100,000 building inspections in that time. So we kind of know our stuff, right? I like to say. This is very performance-based. It's meant to be very pragmatic and cost-effective and really focus again on what we, the scientific community, think is most important. And that's those basic fundamentals when it comes to managing the indoor environment. So the program itself uses a tiered approach. And I'm going to get into the tiers a little bit more here in the next couple slides. But I want to just point out that most building rating systems, I think folks are kind of used to the precious metals, right? If you get a certain score, you get bronze. If you do a little better, you get silver, gold, platinum, et cetera. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. But we wanted to use a different approach and have different tiers to let the consumer, the customer, essentially decide what best suits their need. And within that tier, there are criteria and thresholds that must be met. And if you achieve it, you get it. If you don't, then you roll up your sleeves and do what you need to do to get there. And often cases, folks will start with one tier and evolve to a more comprehensive tier later, depending on market demands, et cetera. So as we dig in here a little bit, we're going to start with tier 1. Tier 1 is a verified healthy building for indoor air. And one of the things I often say is, to me, indoor air is kind of the bedrock in many respects when it comes to optimizing the indoor environment overall. It's a really important part of this sort of healthy building initiative, if you will. And certainly it's really important right now because we're dealing with a pandemic that is essentially an airborne infectious disease. And this is really kind of mission critical. But outside of a pandemic, again, this is really important to people's health, their well-being, and really their productivity. I think a lot of people on this call have probably read some of the Harvard study on IAQ and productivity. If you haven't, I recommend you do. It's pretty cool stuff. There's also a really interesting research paper that Stoke, one of our friends in the sustainability community, has put out some years ago about the ROI on a healthy building that I often recommend. I think it's really well done and puts that kind of into context, which is often hard to do. It's a lot easier to do an ROI on energy efficiency than it is on productivity. So as we go to tier 2, and again, I'm going to get into some of the specifics a little bit later on what we're actually doing and just keeping it high level for now. But tier 2 is essentially building on tier 1, and it's adding a water component. So now we have a verified healthy building for indoor air and water, and we're focusing on water quality both for consumption and also on waterborne pathogens, really focused on Legionella prevention. Legionella is actually not a water consumption issue. It's an air quality issue once that water becomes aerosolized. But again, that kind of falls in this tier of indoor air and water. And this Legionella hot button. We could do a whole nother 2 hours on that another day, but it's a real hot button, especially now with underused buildings and underused plumbing systems. That's where stuff can really get kind of hairy. Moving on to the third tier. Tier 3 again builds on the other two, so you can see how this works. Now we have healthy building for indoor environment. So you have the air, you have the water. We're incorporating other aspects of a healthy building, such as noise, lighting, and even janitorial effectiveness. And we'll touch on that a bit more here in a few moments. When it comes to industry alignment, this is something that I'm asked about quite a bit. And we're often asked the question, is this different or is this better than other building rating systems like LEED or BREEAM or WELL or Fitwel or Neighbors if you're in Australia, or Green Star? I mean, it's hard to even keep track of how many of these building rating systems there are sometimes. But this isn't the right question, right? It's not the question of what's better. And in fact, we work very closely with the organizations behind these programs, like Liam, you mentioned IWBI earlier, Center for Active Design, BRE, USGBC, et cetera. We are all sort of friends in the industry, right? And we all share the same mindset, which is that a rising tide lifts all ships, right? And it isn't a question of what's better. It's really a question of what better suits the customer need in any given situation. So we really want to help promote and work in these other industry initiatives. And in many cases, it's good to point out that there are synergies or alignment. There are areas where we call out one another's programs in our reference documents, and you can earn points across different programs. So what we're seeing very often in the industry is it's not one of these, it's a combination. And again, it all depends on what the customer is really interested in. Now, getting into the detail a little bit more, the inspection itself, so the initial on-site inspection typically takes about 1 day to a week, depending on what tier, of course, and depending on how large of a project. If you've got a space within a building, maybe it's 20,000 square feet, or a small campus type building, that might take a better part of a day for the on-site work. If it's a 500,000 to 1 million square foot building, could take as much as a week, maybe a little bit longer if you're pursuing tier 3 for a very large building. I think the largest building we've done to date was close to 3 million square feet. So as you can imagine, that takes a little bit longer. And once we've completed that initial kind of baseline inspection, we issue a very comprehensive evaluation report that really provides all the detail of what we did, the data we collected, might provide some action items, some recommendations, some basic insights, et cetera. And then we're also providing what we call a gap analysis. We often call it a report card, although you're not being graded. It's just kind of a succinct, more like a checklist style, 1 to 2 pager that shows that you're meeting all the criteria. And if there's something that needs to be addressed, it's a very simple way to work back and forth with the on-site folks to make sure that that's addressed. Maybe it's a gap in a filter bank, or a clogged condensate line, or an elevated CO2 level, et cetera. We work with the customer. Oftentimes we don't need to revisit a site if there can be some photographic documentation shared of some corrective action, et cetera. And I'll talk a little bit about more about that sort of customer relationship in the process here in a moment as well. So once that's done, that first inspection, that first gap analysis is worked through. The building or the portfolio or the space within a building receives a mark, a virtual mark that can be used in marketing materials. Then physical marks can be created as well, either window clings or plaques for the lobby or wherever, the reception area, et cetera. And then that building or that space or that portfolio is listed on UL's database of verified buildings on verify.ul.com. This isn't so much like a marketing site, it's more of a proof site. If somebody's claiming that they have a verified space or building or what have you, that's where one goes to make sure that that's legit. And it also, lists the sites and when they expire and they're due for renewal, et cetera, et cetera. So getting into the tiers just a bit more, and again, I'll keep it kind of high level for the sake of time. And we can certainly get into more in the Q&A if people have some specific questions, but talking about tier one, I kind of put this in two buckets, if you will, the qualitative and the quantitative. Now, the quantitative, this is all about collecting air quality data, essentially. But what we're doing is we're spot checking several areas throughout the product boundary so that it's truly holistic, and looking at pollutants that are kind of endemic to buildings, right? They're always there, and you want to make sure they're essentially at safe levels. Things like respirable dust, PM 2.5 that we often hear about, or VOCs, or formaldehyde, or CO2, or carbon monoxide, et cetera. That's the name of the game, is these things are always there, like it or not, unless you're in a clean room environment or something. And the idea is through good maintenance, through good ventilation, et cetera, you're keeping those at bay, you're keeping those down at safe levels. And we'll talk about the sort of enhancement on that idea with the sensor piece here as we round out my part of the discussion as well. The other part that I think is really, really critical, and it's what kind of sets us apart because it's such a big focus in our program, that's the qualitative, right? That's looking under the hood, so to speak, assessing those mechanical systems that are the vehicle where all of this air is coming from, right? Looking at air handling units and fan coil units and heat pumps and duct systems, cooling towers, and doing a qualitative assessment focusing on things like hygiene and filtration and ventilation. This is really the crystal ball, right? Even if you have sensors too, right? This is the crystal ball where you get ahead of the game, meaning air quality can be fine one day, but you have gaps in your filters, you have a clogged condensate line, you've got dirty coils and mold growing in your insulation, et cetera. You're not going to have indoor air quality that's good in perpetuity. It's going to go south sometimes like that, right? So it's really important to be on top of this maintenance. And that's where, again, we are really there to hold the hand of the customer and make sure these things are as they should be. Often it's even, there's added benefit of almost a culture shift with some of the facilities folks in our experience, where they might be a little reluctant at first, but after they kind of go through the process, they have this sense of pride in how they're maintaining and managing their systems. So it's pretty cool to see. And there's a few other things we're doing in tier one as well. Doing cursory checks throughout the building for things related to moisture, right? This is an often problematic thing in buildings where you have moisture intrusion from the envelope or plumbing leaks, et cetera. So using very high-end thermal imaging cameras, we're doing a cursory check and looking at those things. And if we do find issues, we're giving some very clear guidance for remediation. We don't do any of again, we're completely impartial, pragmatic approach here. We're not doing, offering remedial services or products or what have you. We have no agenda. We're there to focus on the performance of the building and give that impartial guidance. And we're looking at some other things like building pressurization as well. Now, moving on to tier two, again, I mentioned this before. This is the water part that's added to the program. Water for consumption, we're looking at EPA primary drinking water standards. We're looking at the domestic water, representative areas, looking at the levels of heavy metals, of coliform bacteria and E. coli, stuff you don't want in your water, believe me. And it's stuff that really, by regulation, you're not supposed to exceed these thresholds, but you can't manage what you don't measure. And that's a big part of this. So we want to look at that. The Legionella piece that I mentioned before, there's a standard out by ASHRAE. It's been out for about 6 years, ASHRAE standard 188. By doing tier two in our program, this is turnkey for compliance to that standard. This is not about sampling the heck out of a building for Legionella. This is about looking at risk factors, doing a risk assessment, developing a water management plan to mitigate risk of Legionella growing and people coming in contact with Legionella. Very important stuff for anybody inside or outside of this program, to be honest. I always really encourage people. It's not a law, but it's kind of the legal standard of care, if you will. And if ASHRAE tells you to do something, just do it, right? You're gonna be much better off than if you don't. So it's really highly encouraged. And then thirdly, when we get into talking about tier 3, again, we're adding in a noise component, not so much noise that's generated in a space during normal activity, but looking at background noise, right? And making sure that that space that's being provided to that customer, that tenant, et cetera, is one where you don't have a lot of excessive noise from the exterior or from the mechanical equipment, et cetera. Same thing for lighting. Lighting changes a little bit depending on if you're a multi-tenant building and we're working for the owner. We're focusing more on lighting for safety and stairwells and corridors. If it's an owner-occupier space, we'll be looking at lighting within that actual workspace as well. So again, it kind of varies depending on the customer type and the space type, et cetera. And lastly, in tier 3, we add this janitorial effectiveness component, which I think is really cool and really helpful. Part of that is simply using the APA audit format that LEED uses. Again, you see some crossover there. But the other piece is actually doing on-site evaluation just after housekeeping and before occupancy, using ATP or bioluminescence testing that we can do in the field. This isn't a pass-fail. This is a collaborative effort where we are assessing those efforts of high-touch surfaces like elevator buttons and handrails, et cetera. And if there are areas that don't seem to be getting the attention that they deserve, we're again working with the customer, working with their janitorial team to give them some awareness and to kind of, shift a little bit in where some of their efforts are done to make sure that that's effective. The thing that you'll hear kind of over and over again is this is meant to be a very warm sort of collaborative program as opposed to kind of this kind of cold pass-fail audit per se. So I'll leave it at that. And again, we can dig in deeper on the actual day-to-day of what to expect in the field during the Q&A, but for the sake of time, we'll leave it there. I did want to talk a little bit about the fact that you've heard me mention it a few times today. One of the things, so I'm going to bark my dog out here. One of the things that we wanted to really make sure when we created this program is that nothing was arbitrary, right? We're not just making stuff up, but we are collating all of the industry guidelines and regulations and standards, and looking at some of the other sustainability initiatives like LEED and WELL and FitWell, et cetera, and setting thresholds and criteria that are standard, right? That are you should be doing anyway, quite frankly, but you don't know what you got until you really assess and do that in an ongoing way as well. So just like to point out that alignment with ASHRAE, EPA, NIOSH, CDC, et cetera. I think that's really important in any building rating system. So, talking a little bit more about, moving outside of that verified and healthy building program, and then we'll pull back in here in a second, but starting to kind of connect the dots with why we are here with Kytera, right? And kind of talking a little bit about the sensor, the sensor game, if you will. Now, we've been helping the industry in general navigate the sensor world for a long time, and we've done so as more of kind of a trusted advisor, if you will. We don't sell sensors. We don't sell sensor platforms. We're essentially sensor platform agnostic, for lack of a better term, but we're happy to team up with Liam and Kytera and folks like that, and really kind of help and promote and educate the importance of sensors, expectations in the built environment in future years, because this is happening and it's happening at a faster and faster rate. And to be honest, I can probably count on one hand how many trusted sensor platform vendors and hardware vendors are out there based on experience, and Kytera is certainly one of them. Great reputation, great product. There is a lot of junk on the market, and I'm often telling consumers to beware. Don't go buy the $75 IAQ sensor on Amazon and think you're getting what you need out of a sensor. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot when you really dig in and you nerd out on this stuff. A lot of it has to deal with resolution and accuracy and limit of quantitation. You know, how accurate is it? It might say it's reading 0.01, but is that actually accurate? These are really important things that the layperson doesn't really realize, and it's important. So it's really, you know, you got to go with a sensor provider that has an industry certification. UL has a certification 2905 on the product side, but I'm not saying that every sensor needs to have that. I'm just saying that any sensor you look at, you want to have some industry recognized certification that proves that what it says it does on the side of the box is actually accurate. That's really, really important. So speaking of sensors and sensor platforms and our advisory play, if you will, we recently published a guideline. We were going to do a standard. It might become a standard one day, but we wanted to be quick, relatively quick, which isn't that quick sometimes in the UL world, to be honest, but at least on some of the standard creation. You know, we recently published 2906 in response to a whole lot of people in our industry asking for some pragmatic guidance from a trusted source like UL. And one thing I should point out is that, again, UL 2906 is just that. It's called the Guidance on the Use of Integrated Air Quality Sensors. It's not a certification, right, or a standard. It's a guideline, and it's meant to help folks make some good informed decisions when they're installing and maintaining a sensor platform. So it's not like we're telling everybody you have to follow this to a T. We're saying, look, you want some general guidance. Here it is, right? Now the guideline focuses on things like prioritizing what parameters you should monitor. There's a lot you can monitor, and sometimes you want to prioritize what's most important. Sensor data quality, again, making sure that that sensor has some type of certification. How many sensors at a minimum should you use for good coverage? How often sensor data quality should be checked, and the need for summarizing data, right? There's a lot of folks who are installing sensors. They've got this great platform, they get a ton of data, and then they don't know what the heck to do with it, right? We're seeing that quite a bit. And the guideline's free to anyone. I think we're going to put it in the chat here if we haven't already. It's free, and it does provide some detail on how UL can provide services to help align to it, but anyone can use it, and that's with or without assistance from UL. So it's there to use. So kind of coming back full circle, and then I'll pass it back to you, Liam. I think we're going to talk about some FAQs here in a moment, but we have an option in for sensor data analysis by UL as an alternative pathway to compliance with the UL verified healthy building program. You know, our inspection program, basically we're out reassessing every 6 months or so on the indoor air quality side. For the tier 2 and tier 3, that's just an annual thing, but to truly be ongoing, we think it's important to come out and test the building more than once a year. So twice a year is what the program requires. However, if a customer has a sensor platform that follows the general intent of UL 2906, right? And we talk through it with the customer to make sure it does, so that they're not just putting in 2 sensors in a 1 million square foot building and saying we have a sensor platform. But if it follows that general intent and we have access to that data, either at a moment in time when that inspection would normally be done, or just in perpetuity where we can access the dashboard, then one of those inspections can be removed, right? Because after all, if we're seeing real-time data continuously, that is really the best scenario in terms of really truly having an ongoing program. So we're bullish on sensors. We think it's finally here. You know, there was a time when people were kind of trying to make sensors work for them, and the science hadn't caught up. Well, the science has caught up, I think, and we see the industry going this way, and we wanted to really kind of incorporate that into what we're trying to do to promote a healthier environment with our program. It's really, I think, when you have those two things in combination, and you've got a trusted science brand behind it like UL, kind of managing a verified program. It's pretty powerful stuff. And I'll stop there. And Liam, if you want to do some FAQs, and then you can round us out, and we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for that intro, Sean. That was really great. There's a lot of questions coming into the Q&A, so we'll definitely get to some of those. And we did prepare a few from some initial discussions, what we were pretty certain would be frequently asked questions. And so you talked a little bit about this, but simply, who's this program for? Who should be going after this?
Yeah, it's a good question, obviously, and I think it's, the obvious is anybody who owns a business, a building, or manages a building, like a third party, manager or operator. Really, anyone with employees, customers, patients. You think of commercial real estate, also corporate real estate, of course, retail, manufacturing, hospitality, the government sector, the transportation sector. It's pretty healthcare, senior living. It's pretty much for everybody other than residential. We didn't really design this specifically to residential. Residential, there's a lot of nuance there when you're talking about testing somebody's lived-in space and expectations and whatnot. So that's excluded. But one of the other things I should mention is we created different iterations of the program document, all of which are published, by the way, on the verified site, which I believe is in the chat as well, where you can find case studies and all sorts of collateral. And the actual program documents are published there as well. So there's a separate one for manufacturing. There's a separate one for hospitality. And the reason being that there's different thresholds that you want to look at for, say, a manufacturing facility than a Class A commercial office building. There are different things that are important in hospitality to a degree than in an office building or a manufacturing facility. So we wanted to be mindful of that and not just kind of push a square peg in a round hole, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's a couple questions that came in just now mentioning that the chat is disabled. And so some of those links maybe have not been sent through, but just a heads up to everybody that there will be a follow-up email going out, which has links to the information as well as the guidelines. So don't worry, you will be able to get access to all of this. And you talked about this one briefly, but if you go into a little bit more detail, what is the difference between UL Verified Healthy Building and WELL LEED other building certifications?
Yeah, and I would add some of those others in there as well, like Fitwell and BREEAM, and again, there's several others. And I don't know that I mentioned it before, but if I didn't, I should point out that there are a few policy requirements in our program, but we're not reviewing those policies. Things like an IAQ management plan, a preventative maintenance plan, a mold and moisture awareness plan. The nice thing is, for folks that don't have that, at least for some of those, we're able to provide them turnkey, white labeled. They can edit them as they see fit, but these are really important policies to have in place to manage the indoor environment. So, but beyond that, again, we're really performance-based, and other wellness-related building rating systems like WELL and Fitwell are partially performance-based, but also include a lot on amenities, on HR policies, et cetera. And there are new programs that they're bringing to market that are more performance-based, but point being, those are all really important things. We wanted to be hyper-focused on how the building is performing specifically. So that's some of the differences there. And again, there's a lot of alignment, as I mentioned. LEED and BREEAM are really more general sustainability programs, while portions of these programs certainly include wellness and IEQ. They're much broader. They're looking at things like energy consumption and waste stream and recycling, et cetera. So it's a little bit of a different animal, but again, plenty of alignment there. And the last thing that I want to point out, and I kind of mentioned this before, is again, that this is a very warm, collaborative journey that we go on with our customers. If things fall short, you don't need another consultant. We are the consultant as well. We're not going to recommend a product that would be a conflict of interest, but we're going to hold the customer's hand and get them over the finish line. I think that's really all that should matter. I think it's something that we're missing in the industry a little bit, is that it shouldn't matter how you get there, just get there, right? If we can just get buildings better, then we move the needle, and that's really what it's all
Yep.
about. So because of that, I just want to point out that we've yet to have a customer fail, and we're talking about something like, I think we're close to, if not at 1,000 buildings that have gone through this, or spaces in buildings, and several 100 million square feet. Nobody's failed yet. Now, some have really had to roll up their sleeves and do a lot, and it's taken longer to get there. But the fact that we're focusing on these fundamentals, provided there's a willingness to do it, and I should point out, this isn't like a capital expense thing either. It's usually all about really kind of rolling up sleeves. So I think the fact that we have that in place has really made it our customers have responded very well to that. They really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like that you mentioned earlier, this is it's sort of a collaborative process. And ultimately it's all about improving the space. So definitely love that direction. So tied to that, what are some, if you could just share, obviously we do have limited time in the sort of the remainder of the webinar, but if you could share some
I'll be quick.
stories, that would be awesome.
Yeah, just a couple anecdotal things here. And again, there's plenty of stuff on the verified website, case studies, et cetera, that you can see. But a couple quick hitting examples. The Music Center campus in LA, with the iconic Walt Disney Concert Hall and the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, they utilize this program to kind of open their doors back up to audiences. Irvine Company in the commercial real estate world, really great client. They run a really tight ship, and they use this program in about 50 million square feet of space as part of their Comeback with Confidence initiative. Vancouver International Airport recently used this program as a way to provide healthier spaces to travelers. RMZ, our first India portfolio of about 1 million square foot campus in India. And there's several other in the commercial real estate market, Brookfield, Boston Properties, LBA, Car Properties. There's a bunch that we're really proud of, and it's fun to watch it expand and add to that list.
Perfect, thanks. I'll be going through Vancouver International Airport in about 72 hours. So
look for the label.
Check that out. Yeah, perfect. All right. So in the remaining time, I'm just going to give a short overview of some of the things to look for in choosing an IAQ sensor. And we do have a long list of questions, so we will do our best to get through some of those. We'll probably have to follow up offline afterwards. And so here we are at the slide where thunder was stolen.
Sorry.
No, this is obviously a great line that always comes up. Fundamentally, what everyone wants is not more data. It's a better indoor environment. It is better results. And at the foundation of that is data collection, understanding what's actually happening within a space. So historically, how did we do that? Or how is this still often done today? Spot testing is certainly one method. And I was really happy to hear your comments of the science has caught up, and I fully agree. Spot testing is still a method for taking air quality measurements that exists in a lot of environments, but it does have its limitations. And so what we mean by spot testing is a measurement at a specific place within the building, not necessarily done, well, definitely not done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, but maybe once in spring, the next time in winter, maybe annually, biannually. And the challenge with this is, of course, that air changes. The overall indoor environment is always changing. It changes with the seasons, it changes with occupancy, it changes with the usage of the space. Two people in a conference room is very different from 16 people crammed into a tiny conference room. The air that we're breathing in an environment like that is also changing. And so this is a really great graph that I think sort of makes that extremely clear. When you're looking at a building during the construction phase, the air quality is typically not great. Construction is finished. There's often a flush out phase, during which time the air quality can be acceptable. And a spot check at that moment, for example, could provide readings that say that the air is great. Then you close the windows, close the doors, everybody packs into the building, and suddenly the results can look very different. So when you have readings that could be fluctuating up and down from bright green and healthy into the dark red and unhealthy, that's a really good reason to start looking at a continuous stream of data. There are many, many advantages to being able to measure data continuously. You can identify problems, because typically the best way to find a problem is by looking at the trend and looking at patterns and identifying, for example, every morning at 8 a.m., there's an issue. Okay, well, maybe it's something about the maintenance schedule. Maybe it's every winter, the particulate matter increases, and it's because filters haven't been changed at the time they should be. So I really appreciated your comment earlier, Sean, about how it's important to look at the actual equipment, because sometimes down the road, there's a small fault which down the road will lead to a serious air quality problem. And I think these things really go together, where during this early on, you can identify potential issues that might impact the future, but then you also want to have continuous monitoring that will help you spot when those issues actually come up. Ultimately, there's also a lot of room for improvements around energy efficiency, around being able to ventilate our buildings enough and provide clean air while also not overdoing it. If a building's not occupied, we probably shouldn't be pumping a ton of fresh air into it. Climate change is a major issue. It's probably something on everybody's mind, and everything that we can do to make our buildings operate more sustainably while also being healthy, I think is a real win. And again, you touched on some of these earlier, Sean, but just to share some of the key considerations that we typically be looking at, thinking about if anyone here is looking at measuring IAQ within their project, some things that you might want to think about is really at the start, understand what the goals of the project are. You're going for a specific certification. If you are, let's say, going for well certification, UL, reset, any of the other certifications or standards or verification programs out there, it's really important to understand what the requirements are there and make sure that you're choosing equipment that actually matches up with that. And if you're ever in doubt, definitely reach out to the manufacturers of the equipment. You know, in our case, we're always extremely happy to help walk people through the different certifications, the different requirements they might have. And if our products aren't a fit, then we'll be, you know, very straight and tell you that you could go with something else that would be a better fit. But I definitely recommend talking to consultants and experts who can help identify, match the needs between the products that exist that can do this job for you and the requirements that you actually have in your project. So a couple other things to think about when you're looking at this is sort of the future state. How are these systems going to interface with your building management system or building automation system? Ultimately, if we're trying to drive towards healthier buildings, there is a key element of control in there. How can we use this data to actually make more intelligent decisions and ultimately improve indoor air quality? And when it comes to that, then it is vital to make sure that you've mapped out how these systems will integrate with your entire, with the sort of the larger buildings, so that you don't end up at the very end going, well, I've got this data, I can't plug it into anything else. Finally, maintenance requirements is really a big one to keep in mind. Sensors are scientific pieces of equipment. They do require maintenance to some degree, and it's really important to understand what the requirements of that are before you embark on a giant project and suddenly find yourself a few years down the road realizing that the sensors need to be recalibrated, maybe they need to be replaced, maybe they are not measuring the parameters that are most important today because requirements change over time. So at Kaitera, we have a modular design where our sensors are contained within modules, which makes them easy to replace, easy to recalibrate, easy to upgrade. And there are various different solutions out there. I just really recommend that everybody understand not only what needs to be done on day one, but how is this going to continue functioning and delivering valuable, high quality data throughout the lifetime of the building. mentioned this earlier, but if you're on this webinar here, you will also be receiving a copy of the UL 2906 guideline, as well as our latest ebook, which is all about high performance buildings, operational and design principles. So keep an eye on your inbox, and these are, again, these were not posted in the chat, so keep an eye on your inbox for these documents. Technically, we are a little bit over time here, so a big thank you for everybody hanging around, and really happy to jump into the Q&A. So we've got a lot of questions. Some of these we'll probably have to follow up offline with afterwards. I don't know, Sean, have you had a chance to look at some of the questions that have come?
Yeah, I'm sorry I talked too much, and that's probably why we ran long. It's
No,
my wife tells me that all the time, for what it's worth. No, I was able to answer a few of these. So if you look at some of the responses, but we can. I mean, I've got a little time. I don't know, Liam, if we want to stay on for a few minutes or if we want to send out written answers. But would you like me to go through a few that are here and we can discuss them?
Yeah, we've still got the absolute vast majority of participants on the call, and some people are probably waiting for answers. So I'd say let's go through a few, and what we don't get to, follow up afterwards.
Okay. Well, I see one from Mohammed here asking about whether there's an accreditation for a professional to carry out these types of IAQ inspections. Not yet. That could be a future state thing. We're working on a kind of a third-party training program. We do have a few partners in other areas around the globe, be it UK, APAC, ME. So there are some for folks in those parts of the world. We can certainly have an offline discussion about looking at something specific, but for the most part, as in terms of opening this up to the market, right now this is really a UL service, meaning we are the ones performing the inspection, the evaluation, and everything that goes with it. And again, that's the second question, kind of the same variation on a theme here from Mohammed. Lena asks, how much do you charge for an indoor air testing for one area? That's a kind of a tough question to answer, to be honest. If we're talking about doing the verification program in one kind of tenant space or something, that tends to be in the neighborhood of, it could be, I'll probably put my foot in my mouth here, but something like a few grand a year, typically, if it's a really small space. If this is more of an issue where there's a concern in a space and it's outside of the verification market, somebody has a need for an inspection, best thing to do is just reach out to us directly and talk through what that concern is, and it's very easy to provide pricing for that. Here we have one for IAQ, and in order to get certification, it's actually verification. Certification is more product focused than UL, but is there a minimum requirement for number of square meters that should be covered by one sensor? You'll see that in that guidance document that Liam is providing. Again, the idea for our program is meeting the general intent of that. So it doesn't need to be to a T. What we're trying to do is make sure that there's representative coverage in a building. So you'll find that the answer to that, I don't know it offhand, to be honest, but it has to do with not just square footage or square meterage, but also the number of ventilation zones, et cetera. Let's see, we got time for a few more here. Let's see, what does this one say? Do you have a recommendation for a residential certification? Let me circle back on that one if I could. We had a program that we were running on new modular homes at UL. We've kind of put it on the shelf, to be honest, for the time being, but there may be some others. Obviously there's LEED for homes, but as it pertains more to the wellness side of things, we can circle back on that one. Is there any crossover with well or fit well certifications? Meaning, if we meet certain UL requirement, we meet well or fit well requirements? Yes, and that's actually written in the reference documents for those initiatives. There's for well, there's I believe it's called a gateway to wellness, where points can be earned, and you'll see UL verified healthy buildings called out specifically. Similarly, in Fitwell, for some of the IAQ testing requirements and the water, the Legionella focused water requirements, again, you'll see our program specifically called out within those reference documents. And it works both ways, of course. If somebody's already pursuing one of those, it can check the box for some of those portions of our program. Is it required to conduct the inspection during occupancy to make it more accurate? Sort of. Again, this is an ongoing program, and we realize there are challenges right now with building occupancy, especially in the office building space. So the reason why we're okay at low occupancy doing this is because we know we're going to be back again and again. This is an ongoing program, so you don't need to hit an occupancy threshold to get that initial verification. In fact, some folks use this as kind of a way to commission a new building as it's being turned over to a building owner or tenant, et cetera. So that's, you know, it's important to have people in the building, yes, but we don't need to delay that initial verification for that reason, since it is ongoing. So that maybe we'll stop there. I think, Liam, unless there's any others that you want to call out here, I think I missed a few, but we can certainly circle back in writing as well.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I think that's great. And definitely we've got any remaining questions. We'll do a sweep through this after the webinar is over. And if your question was not answered, then we'll do our best to reach out and make sure that you get an answer. So a big thanks to Sean for participating. I learned a lot. This was awesome. And big thanks, of course, to all the attendees. This is really great. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
Take care, everybody.